So for my research, for part B, I had the question, how has COVID-19 affected or even made worker burnout more prevalent in the workplace? So I did some research on this, and if you actually go to the CDC, there's an entire section on like a resources kit, basically telling you how to avoid it and even the challenges that it poses, such as change in routine, employment and educational challenges just for kids, and obviously just day-to-day life for workers, break breaking breaking continuity of healthcare, and then also significant life events missed, such as graduation, things like that, because due to the pandemic, obviously there's been limited thing or limits on things. So I know a lot of a lot of people actually didn't get to really have a real graduation, or a traditional one, a more traditional one. That's what I should say. And also with this, people also feel a loss of security and safety just because worrying about the pandemic, the safety of themselves, sickness, and obviously passing it off to the loved ones and whoever else it may be. Secondly, I found another source. This one was from CNBC. So, and the last one, so all the information I just gave, just to reiterate, was actually from the CDC itself. This one right now is from CNBC, and this is remote work burnout is growing. Pandemic stretches is growing as pandemic stretches. And here's how to manage it. Basically, some tips as well, and there's some statistics. So basically, over 2/3 or 69% of employees are experiencing worker burnout symptoms while working from home, as well as stress and financial anxiety just because of inflation, stuff like that, is also a big problem. Some people do love to work from home, as you can see from my interview with my mother. She feels it's more flexible, better, but her work has a really good understanding of it. So that's a really big plus for her. But other places may not be as, let's say understanding or whatever the case may be. So that's why I believe it's leading to more worker burnout. And because you have to deal with work as well as the average task of staying home, taking care of the house. If you have kids, their routines, all while trying to be at work and be focused on your tasks. And finally, the last thing I have is a study from BMC, which is Biomed Central. So this is a study done for job burnout and its impact on the ability in biosafety. And for this one, it's just their staff during the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's an interesting study that I read through, but the main results were a total of 67.6% of just this one place is experiencing job burnout. This is a huge amount considering that's like before almost 2/3. So it's clearly a problem with the whole pandemic going on, and some are more understanding than others with it. So we need to ensure that to avoid this, we need to take the necessary steps, like I said, or as seen, exampled, whatever you want to call them. With my mother, her work has been very understanding, very forward, very, making sure that everyone stays mentally healthy, as well as physically as well, to make sure they have time to do other things and aren't getting burnt out as easily. So workplaces that aren't doing this, I feel, need to step up a little bit, because if you burn out your workers, you're not getting they're gonna not gonna be as productive and not gonna give you the best results compared to workers who get those little breaks like my mother does, or just the resources in order to avoid that burnout. But yeah, that's it for my research that I did on this. Thank you very much.
All right, so for part B, I decided to take the question, do employees prefer in-office or remote working? And I found a bunch of articles related to that. And my findings were honestly pretty crazy. We all know that remote working is obviously here to stay now, whether it be at a hybrid level, which means you work a couple days in the office and a couple days remote from home. Many different articles I looked at were based on survey results that large companies such as Good Hire and Blind conducted with US employers and employees. I found that based on a survey conducted by Good Hire, it was found that 68% of US employees preferred remote working over in-office work. 45% of those people also said they would quit their jobs if remote working was not an option. Most employees in the US want to work from home for 3 to 5 days during the week. So that could be, again, the 3 days at home and then the 2 days in office, or the overall 5 days, which would make it a full remote working experience. It was also found that people would forfeit pay and benefits to ensure stay-at-home work options. And that to me is mind-boggling. That's crazy that COVID has such an effect now where people don't want to go into the office because they're scared that they're getting other employees sick or bringing the sickness home to their families. People who are looking for jobs currently are looking for remote working options over anything else. I mean, I never thought we would get to this point where people would be looking for just remote, but here we are. Most companies are adopting a hybrid style of work, allowing for in-office and remote as well. As I already explained, the hybrid situation is where people or companies offer half and half, or like 25%, 75%, where people work in office or at home. Based on another survey conducted by a large accounting firm called PwC, it was found that 83% of employers say that the shift to a remote style has been incredibly successful for the company. So basically, it's allowing their employees, as they said, that they are more rested, they feel better about the work that they're doing, and that in turn is making their company more successful. It was found that 64% of respondents would rather work from home than take a $30,000 pay raise. And that to me is insane. Like $30,000 a year added on to what you're making is, I mean, that's incredible to me. But people would rather be at home with their families and have more time. And it was found that people are better rested and worrying less about getting their coworkers sick with COVID and other viruses. Now, really, how does this tie in with worker burnout? Obviously, COVID has shifted so many things. People are working so much more. But we found that worker burnout is a huge kind of result of what COVID has done. People don't want to go into the office. They're scared to get people sick. They're scared to get sick themselves, bring it back home. So people are obviously, they want to switch to remote working now that they've had that experience and they've seen that they have more time with their families. So this is a huge result of that.
The topic that I investigated was our question, how have different companies dealt with worker burnout? So before answering this question, it might be helpful to establish some context. So according to an article by CNBC, a poll found that 87% of employers thought that stress and burnout were problems for their workforce, and 70% of workers said that they would leave their current job for one that would reduce these problems. So with these two statistics in mind, what are businesses doing to reduce this issue? So the first important way that some businesses are reducing burnout is by having a work smarter, not harder workplace culture. So a psychiatrist that was participating in that CNBC study described burnout as when somebody wants to do a good job, but the system that they're in prevents them from doing so and they give up. So by having a work smarter, not harder workplace culture, that problem would be alleviated. Another big way that employers can help with burnout is by leading by example. So James Kinney, who is the Global Equity and Inclusion Officer for the advertising company Ogilvy, says that being authentic and showing emotional vulnerability is something that leaders can do and should do and make a real part of the culture. The final thing that employers can do is just to make sure that their employees are being taken care of. So, some ways that this can be accomplished are by offering health benefits, personal coaches, and things like childcare, even to alleviate the stress that employees face.
So for the interview section of the project, I decided to interview my mother and my father. My mom is a real estate agent at Tate and Foss Sotheby's in Rye, New Hampshire. She's been there for, I want to say, about 4 years now. So I asked both of them a series of 3 questions. The first one being, how has the COVID-19 virus affected or even made worker burnout more prevalent in the workplace? My mom answered, people's job security was gone. People worried about job existence and company existence because the pandemic has had such a toll on the economy. Furthermore, people had to find alternatives for childcare and had to juggle their work lives and take care of their children who are out of school and at home for remote learning. It just made people more stressed and scared for the future, creating what we now know as worker burnout. The next question I asked was, have you experienced worker burnout recently? She said, no, but there have been many times where I was tired from all of the news and other things amid the pandemic, creating stress and nervousness. And the last question I asked her was, how has your company dealt with employees who are facing worker burnout? She said, switch to Zoom meetings to ease the stress of possible infection and make it easier for workers who had to stay at home and work from home due to lack of childcare. Provided lots of information to workers who were in need of financial assistance and educated on government programs available for financial assistance due to COVID-19 hardships. Furthermore, they are continuously available to talk things through with workers if they get overwhelmed and need to talk to somebody. And the last thing she said was flexibility for your employees, which in turn creates less stress, which can minimize worker burnout. And that was one of the big themes that I found when talking both to my mother and my father, was the company flexibility to help with relieve the stress that the pandemic has created. People in the company are more flexible by allowing the remote work, which in turn allows people and employees to be at home with their children because they weren't in school. It was all remote learning. They had to be there for their children. They had to watch out for them all day. People were super scared of losing their jobs immediately when they switched to remote work because they didn't know what was going on. They had no social interaction. They didn't ask questions. It was all on their own trying to figure things out. So if they had a slip up, if they made a mistake, they were scared that they were going to get fired. The job existence, the economy was so bad that they were scared that their companies had to shut down. So flexibility is huge for a company to help battle the hardships that come with worker burnout and COVID-19 in general. So as I said, I also interviewed my father. He was a CEO at a large pharmaceutical company for at least 6 years. He then retired, but then now he has started a new company called Acadis, where he's the co-founder and CEO or president of that. And he's been doing that for around, I want to say 2 years now. They specialize in pharmaceutical consulting and also architecture. So I asked him the series of 3 questions as well. So with the first one, how has the COVID-19 virus affected or even made worker burnout more prevalent in the workplace? He answered that the COVID-19 pandemic has affected the workforce for our company and our clients in all areas of their personal and professional lives. Employees had to adjust their personal lives with childcare management, remote working schedules, lack of coworker interactions, and lack of lenient interactions. So the next question I asked was, have you experienced worker burnout recently? He said these additional stress factors, and especially the unknowns about their personal safety, health impact of family and loved ones and its duration, took its toll on our employees. We didn't experience typical burnout symptoms, but we saw anxiety and fear paralyzing our employees. That is another big theme that I found when I interviewed my mom and my dad, was fear. People were scared. People were scared of losing their jobs. People were scared of losing everything. They were scared of losing their families, everything. So fear played a huge part in worker burnout. People were scared to mess up. So they worked hours and hours. They were scared that they didn't have money or weren't going to be able to have money anymore. They were scared they weren't going to have a job anymore. So they worked as much as they can. When it came to that point, now people feel burnt out. The last question I asked was, how has your company dealt with employees who are facing worker burnout? And this is where I definitely saw also another theme between my mom and my dad, because again, flexibility is a huge one, and also the switch to remote working. So he said, we provided frequent information about the pandemic, personal protection measures such as masks and other things, gloves, vaccination, and promoted remote work schedules. Social distancing, mask wearing, and increased hygiene measures were mandated when employees had to visit the office. We gave our employees utmost flexibility. As I said, a huge theme and a huge thing that companies can do right now or at the beginning of the pandemic was be flexible for your employees and stop the burnout immediately. Said to manage their personal and professional lives and reduce additional stress levels. Once all of our employees were vaccinated, we could clearly see a reduction in anxiety and stress levels. So as I said, the many themes in this were the hardships that came with remote working and learning at first. So people were scared with remote working because they didn't know if what was going on. They were nervous that they didn't have their relationships. They didn't have that interaction with humans anymore. They were scared if they made a mistake, they would get fired. They were on a short leash, something like that. They didn't know how to work Zoom. They were late to meetings. It was all a huge debacle and people were scared. And then learning as well, people had to be home for their children. And the children were home with remote learning, and that created a whole nother stress level with balancing at home work that they were scared already to do, and then having their children home for the whole day 24/7, having to watch over them while also doing their work at the same time. And that's what definitely started and created that worker burnout for many people. Company flexibility to help relieve the stress the pandemic created. Absolutely probably the biggest theme that I found in here. Flexibility for companies right now and in the past when the whole thing started is huge. Having that flexibility allow for people to be home with their kids, see their families 24/7, have that remote working, have everything, just be flexible for your employees. And that was a huge thing when it came to reducing stress and anxiety and worker burnout. And overall, just the things that companies can do. This is providing PPE equipment. This is providing social distancing. This is just providing information for the employees was also another huge theme that I found, just being able to let them know and help them financially if they need help. Just everything, just be there for your employees to reduce that worker burnout.
All right, can you tell me about yourself, what your job title is, where you work, how long you've been there?
My name is Kate. I work at Liberty Mutual. I'm a product owner. I have been in that role for about 4 years now, but I've been at the company for 32 years.
All right. So just to get started off with the questions that we have for you today, how has COVID-19 affected worker burnout in your workplace?
I don't think I don't feel like I've really witnessed that firsthand. I have no doubt that it exists. I can totally see, where people, because we are currently primarily working from home. We did start off as a mandatory work from home. It's slowly changed to more of a voluntary work from home, but as far as I know, a good 90% of the workforce is still working from home. So, I can totally see that people probably feel like they're never off work. They're accessible at home 24/7. So I can totally see where that is a thing, but I don't feel like I've personally really witnessed it too much. For me, I think I see people more really enjoying the work-life balance that working from home offers them.
All right. Have you experienced worker burnout recently? You kind of just
personally, for me, I enjoy the work-life balance. Just the I'm at home. I can if I was in the office, maybe I would run down to the cafeteria and have like a 15-minute coffee break. I feel like I have the flexibility to do a 15-minute load of laundry break or something, or take something out of the freezer for dinner. If I, maybe when I was working from the office, if I forgot to take something out of the freezer for dinner in the morning, then forget it. I got to come up with a new plan for dinner. But I kind of have all day to make sure I have the opportunity to do that. So again, I have appreciated that flexibility personally.
How has your company dealt with employees who are facing worker burnout? Is there anything you've seen from them?
So again, personally, I don't feel like I have really witnessed, certainly not anything specific, but I do, I feel like the company has my director, my manager, both in a one-on-one setting with just me, or even in a larger department setting. I feel they've frequently encouraged employees to utilize your available time off. Don't feel like you need to be constantly working. The time off is there for a reason. If you need that, a break, take that time off. And even aside from taking advantage of our time off policies, they've often encouraged employees to do what employees feel is necessary to support good mental health. I feel like there have definitely been, they've encouraged that quite a bit. Probably more so earlier on with COVID-19, maybe a little less as time has gone on. But I have no doubt that, employees still feel supported in that way based on the encouragement they had received early on. And there's also a lot of flexibility. I mentioned, originally we started off as mandatory work from home. It's now gone to more of a voluntary situation, but our, again, management has been very supportive of, if you prefer working from home, you should continue to do that. And again, I mentioned that I'm taking a guess at the actual number, but probably a good 90% of people are still working from home. Certainly to some degree that has to do with how safe they feel in the office with respect to COVID-19, but I think it more speaks to their preference for working from home and the flexibility they're appreciating there. So I think that's been my experience in general with how COVID-19 has really impacted my workplace, specifically with respect to worker burnout.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
You're welcome.
All right.
How has COVID-19 virus affected or even made worker burnout more prevalent in your workplace?
I don't think it's been worker burnout for us at my workplace. What people are doing now is instead of their travel time, so most people had at least 30 minutes, some up to an hour and a half. They're using that for work, either before or after, or they're using it, they're taking back essentially their personal time and doing housework, getting kids ready for school. So they're gaining some time. So we haven't experienced any worker burnout at my job, at my company, and I'm speaking for myself and those in the Massachusetts facility.
Okay. And that was throughout even COVID too, you said?
Yes, throughout COVID. Yeah, my manager is very conscious of people's physical and mental well-being. So he's arranged for virtual exercise classes for the globe, because we are a global company. And about 3 or 4 times a week, there's yoga or just regular cardio kind of exercise classes that are offered free to all employees, as well as he's made sure everybody is aware on how to access the resource that's available to us in case we feel like we're burning out, to be able to talk to somebody. And again, that's also free.
Cool. So that actually kind of leads into my next question. So how has your company dealt with employees who are facing worker burnout? So I know you just said your bosses set up a lot of stuff, but your company overall has Is that all that's done?
No, the manager, so I support 4 senior executives at my company. And what they all do is they have a 30-minute one-on-one with all of their employees, their direct employees every week. And they encourage all of their people leaders to do the same, just to gauge how people's mental well-being is. In addition to that, we have staff meetings, so we get to see each other. What we've lost, although I personally love working from home, what we have lost is that human interaction. So, a couple of weeks ago, I was in the office, and a whole bunch of us actually came in because Dermot came over from Ireland. And those quick, like 5-minute walking by, you see somebody in the office and you take care of something or just chat personal stuff. We've lost that interaction with our working from home because of COVID now.
Cool. And could you say you've experienced worker burnout recently or in the past?
And before COVID, yes. Now, no. No, my direct manager, although I do have 4 of them, they're all very good. They're very adamant about working business hours, so no more than business hours for my time zone.
Cool. And what do you personally do to avoid worker burnout?
I get up and walk away from the computer. If I don't have anything right away, I just try and shut down for a little while. I'll go off, I'll do like laundry around the house, housework, whatever, that kind of thing, just to decompress, so to speak. I do food shopping, whatever I need to do for me. Reading, sometimes I'll be reading or watch the TV. Even though it's during the workday, I'll just add on to my day to ensure all my tasks are done and that I'm working my proper hours.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
And would you say you're satisfied with everything with your job in terms of like how it's handled and like, you feel accomplished with it?
Yes, I love my job. I love my job. I love the people I work with. So I think that's what is good for me. Not everybody can say that, but my particular company, we're a little company within a huge company. We're a small product line within a huge company. And we're almost like a family. We refer to ourselves as the Panametrics family. And everybody sees that interaction we have with each other like a real family. So
Cool. That pretty much is all, or concludes all my questions. I mean, if there's anything you want to talk about aside from that, I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
For my interviews, the first person I interviewed was my Dunkin' Donuts manager. So for the first question, how has COVID-19 affected worker burnout in your workplace? She said that once schools first shut down, and most of the people who work there are in high school. So once schools first shut down, people actually wanted to work more, not less. But once Dunkin' Donuts shut down as well and opened back up, it was a different story. When we opened back up, people were a lot less reliable, a lot more call-outs, and a lot less effort when people were there. For the second question, have you experienced worker burnout recently? She said, sort of. The challenges that come with managing through COVID, especially with a family at home, made working a lot less enjoyable. But on the other hand, I still always got my job done and I worked hard, didn't let it get to me. For the third question, how has your company dealt with employees with burnout? She said, enforcing rules is mostly up to me unless it's something really serious. Call-outs, slacking, stuff like that is up to me to deal with. So I try to be compassionate and not give people a hard time, while at the same time making sure that people still follow the rules and treat me with respect. For my second interview, I interviewed my dad, who is the Director of Public Works for the city of Methuen, Massachusetts. He said, for the first question, how has COVID-19 affected burnout in your workplace? I guess it's made it worse. I'm not sure I'd always call it burnout, though. People's attitudes have changed since before the start of COVID-19, though, for sure. A lot of people with jobs that used to be in City Hall are working from home now. And at least in our case, people working from home might as well not be working at all. For the question, have you experienced worker burnout recently? He said, going back to working in person, which was a long time ago at this point, but going back to working in person in a reduced capacity with much less getting done has definitely been a demotivator, but I always still do everything as well as I can and how I've always done it. For the third question, how has your company dealt with workers experiencing burnout? He said, we obviously can't just fire people who don't put in their best, but we don't want to either. If anything, I'm pleased with how employees have done overall. It's really peers and other people in City Hall that I wish would put in a little bit more effort.
All right, would you mind just telling me a little bit about yourself, like your job title, where you work, how long you've been there?
Sure. My name is Mark Faletra. I work for Amadeus Hospitality in Portsmouth. I have been with the company for about 14 and a half years, and I'm currently a technical support manager, and I manage a level 2 support organization for the company.
All right. So the first question that we have for you today is, how has COVID-19 affected worker burnout in your workplace?
So I'll definitely say it's been a concern. Thankfully, haven't had too much experience with dealing with it. We've tried really hard to try to keep our employees engaged. We've been working from home now for almost 2 full years, so we're coming up on that pretty soon. And it was definitely interesting and challenging at first, but I think thankfully, have a really great team and a lot of support from the company to ensure that people don't feel isolated. Technology has been a big factor in it. Being able to use things like obviously Zoom that everybody is aware of. We use Microsoft Teams in our organization and utilize that quite a bit. So it gives people an opportunity to not feel like they're stuck on an island. So we really do try hard to avoid that isolation that can come up. It has happened from time to time for some people on my team. Thankfully for myself, I've never felt it, but certainly just being open and understanding of the situation is really important.
All right. Well, you sort of touched on the next question already. The next 2 questions, actually. Have you experienced worker burnout recently yourself?
Yeah, like I said, I think thankfully no, but I can definitely see where it can come up. Working from home has a lot of advantages, but at the same time, there's the potential for, I suppose you could say, working too much. It becomes really easy to stay plugged in when you're not trying to find a time to detach yourself from the office, to head home, commute time, things like that. So certainly easier to stay attached, which means you just have to make a concerted effort to detach yourself to ensure that you're not getting burned out. It's much easier to continue working that extra 5 minutes, which becomes an extra 10 minutes, which becomes an extra hour, and things like that. So just trying to do your best to balance the work and home.
All right. And the last question we have for you is, how has your company dealt with employees who are facing worker burnout?
Yeah, so our company definitely recognizes the concern and the challenge, and we've instituted things like like team coffee breaks where, it's an opportunity for the team to get together and not necessarily talk about work things like, hey, everybody, let's take a 5-minute break and just chat about, things that are going on, things that normally in an office setting you'd get around the water cooler and things like that. So, those things kind of disappear when you're working from home, but it is an important part of, just sort of the social aspect of feeling invested and feeling engaged as an employee. So trying to arrange things like that and, doing it as a team and as a management company and, or as a management organization and as the company as a whole, ensuring that we're still getting together for our town hall meetings and status updates on the company. So it's just important to recognize it and ensure that people aren't feeling isolated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for your help and thank you for talking to me today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right.
So how has COVID-19 affected or even made worker burnout more prevalent in the workplace for you?
It's been challenging because of all the restrictions that have been put on not only the employees, but also when you have face-to-face customer interactions. Obviously, it brings a different level to it because you have to be concerned about your well-being and whether you contract the disease and potentially bring it home to your loved ones and stuff, so it definitely adds a different layer to it, which makes the work environment a lot more stressful. So absolutely, it's definitely been a new world, challenging.
Cool. And how has your company dealt with employees who are facing worker burnout?
Some employees at one point when this pandemic started were given the option to take some time off through a furlough. Some others were also given the option to work from home, if applicable. Unfortunately, the type of work that I do is not an option. So, those were some of the options that the company did, which ended up working out really well for some of the employees. Again, being able to take some time off so that the way they could be home and take care of their loved ones. And working from home obviously is a huge plus for those folks that are able to perform the job from home.
What do you do to avoid burnout?
Just try to try not to think about things too much. Stress is something that can definitely cause you to burn out a lot quicker. So, just try to relax, make sure that you are following all the established procedures, protocols to remain safe. And thankfully, I personally have been able to accomplish that since the pandemic started. I have not contracted the virus.
Cool. Have you experienced burnout recently at all?
No, I can't say that I have. I mean, been following the same routine for a little bit now, and I'm pretty used to it now, to this new world. So no, I would can't say that it was stressful at first, but once we were able to get used to the new procedures, protocols, it's been sort of like cruising right along.
Okay. And then lastly, I'd like to ask, what would you say you're satisfied with your job overall?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I enjoy doing what I do. I mean, it's customer interaction, which is something that I really love to do, in the sales environment. So personally, I prefer doing it face to face versus do it on the phone. Sometimes, you do have to do it on the phone, but I prefer the face to face interaction. So yeah, I truly enjoy it.
Cool. Well, that's it. Thank you for participating and
Okay, thank you.
stop.
All right, to conclude what we've gone over in this video so far, in terms of how has COVID affected burnout in the workplace, we learned that COVID-19 has had a big impact through things like missing out on important life events and having to worry about getting and spreading the virus. It's been hard for many people to focus on work. COVID has made the stress of burnout worse overall. 2/3 of workers are experiencing burnout. For our second question, do employees prefer working in the office or remote working, which is a hot topic over the past couple of years. We found that 68% of employees prefer being able to work from home, working remote. Most companies are moving to hybrid working, which is like sometime in the office, sometime at home, be that 3 days at home, 2 days in the office, something like that. And companies have actually seen a lot of success with hybrid and fully remote work. Some not so much, but it seems the majority have been successful with it. And burnout really seems to be the cause of this change in mentality, and that burnout coming from the changes because of COVID. So most people really they want to be able to stay at home if they need to because of burnout, because of COVID. And then for our third question that we went over, how can different companies deal with burnout? The big ones that we found were developing a culture that doesn't stress out employees. Don't push your employees too hard when they already have a lot to worry about, especially in the COVID-19 era. Another one was to lead by example. Show your employees that you're human. Allow them to be heard and to be stressed. Don't put too much pressure on them. And then also to take care of your employees. Make sure that they have what they need. That could be they need to work from home to take care of their family. They need more benefits, more health benefits, or even child care, or even time off. Finally, we'd like to say thanks for listening. Burnout is a huge topic in the current day. There's a lot to consider, and it'll be interesting to see how working changes in the future in terms of the balance between remote and in-person especially. There's a lot to think about, a lot to go over, and we hope we've given you a pretty good outline of where we're at in the world. Thank you.